Welcome back, everybody. It is Winsbub Fantasy episode 171. Welcome if you're joining us on the live stream Wednesday, March 19th as we record. For those of you joining us on the podcast, welcome. Happy Thursday. Happy baseball to everyone, at least the Japan series. I know next week will be an even more momentous celebration with opening day. And we are excited to be with you every week from here on in throughout the entire season. Tonight, I am joined, as always, by Steve Giswelli, and we are talking about our most rostered players. Fun topic, one we haven't done a ton in the past, but Steve, it's one that is cool because it's like you put here, it's kind of our guys, but with actual data and exposure to back it up. So I think some of it is draft context, some of it is our philosophy on how we draft, and then a big part of it is we like these guys for one reason or another, at least enough to take a gamble on them. So very excited to get into it. Steve, since we last talked, we have baseball underway as well. That's been exciting, albeit you wait all this time and then you get the pains of, like, for me, a 2-day Freddie Freeman scratch, but you waited for this pain for a long winter, so I won't complain. And yeah, I'm happy it's back. I can't wait for next Thursday. How are you doing out there?
Great, great. Excited that there's been some real meaningful baseball that has been played. Always fun. I know, it doesn't have the same feel as opening day proper, stateside at least, but it's still an awesome experience, especially now with like just how prominent and important Japanese players are in our game now, and how they're the best player in the world is from there, right? And to be able to celebrate that and have that series, I think is really special and awesome and great way to spread the game. Um, so excited that that took place, and it was just amazing seeing Otani homer again, like just
Yeah.
picking up exactly where he left off. Yeah, ups and downs too. We also have Freeman as like our best player in our dynasty league too, so that's painful too. And like that note, what it was like, what is this rib injury that we didn't know about? Like it was all
Right.
the ankle and everything all off season. There's also this cartilage that now
And then
we
he's
didn't know
like
about, and he
begging.
re-aggravated. Like, ugh.
Yeah, then he's begging to play, and he's still not. It's just, but it's all good. And did you watch any of the games? Because it was fun watching, and I feel
Yeah,
like the crowd being that dialed in on every pitch, and yeah, it is cool in its own right, but it's definitely not quite the same as opening day proper. Like you said, I took the day off next Thursday, so I
nice.
I will be locked in. Although I wish the game slate was a little earlier than 3 p.m., but I'll only complain so much about baseball being back, right?
Yeah, that was a little strange, right? I thought that some games start earlier throughout the day, um, but yeah, it's fine. I'll be able to get through, like, at least most of a work day, and then just watch baseball the rest of the day next Thursday. So that's exciting. Yeah, and this game, like, um, I worked in the city these last 2 days, so like at 7 a.m. while I'm sitting on the bus, I was able to throw on a baseball game, which was pretty cool. So
Heck
did
yeah,
not
man.
mind that at all. But excited that we're back. And cannot believe that we're just 7 days out from like baseball every day from here on out. Right? It's
Yeah, we'll save it for the end of the
yeah.
show because we don't want to front load it with me talking about my home league
Sure.
draft, but that also happened since, and yours is this weekend, but we got to at least banter about it on the
I'm
podcast
also
at the end of
drafting
the
right
show.
now, so yeah,
Hey,
this is the thick of draft season. So
yeah,
I'm
you
sure
let me
everyone
know if I
listening
need to
understands. Yeah.
if I need to filibuster over here and just talk about Tyler Fitzgerald or something. But Steve, fun topic tonight. I love that you brought it up. Ironic because for me, I felt like for the first time in maybe 5 or 6 years, I've had a very manageable low amount of teams. To date, I only have four rostered teams, five if you include our dynasty league, but
Mm.
four drafted teams. I'll probably do one more best ball between now and opening day, but you've got a lot more on your belt. So I think you've got, what is it, 7 NFBC and then three on top of that are kind of like daily Yahoo or
And,
Fantrax
and
leagues.
then our dynasty, yeah. So 11 total. Um, Five of them though are draft and hold or best ball. So no
Yeah,
weekly
deeper.
waivers. I wanted to make sure not to have to do waivers, for really more than I can handle. I've made that mistake before. Only 2 of my NFBC leagues are weekly waivers. There's Razslam, which has the 2 waiver runs that run, right? It's two waivers.
Yep.
One in early April and then one closer in June, closer to like the All-Star break. So that's much more manageable. And then I have 3 daily leagues, one being a keeper, 2 quote unquote home leagues, one that I run with a hockey group that I'm in, a bunch of Devils fans that I've forced into and made some fantasy baseball addicts out of. Shout out Coops there, who's been a loyal listener and literally sniped me on every single guy that I talked about or wanted all winter long in our draft last night. So that's super fun too. But yeah, it's I definitely have a good sample. There's definitely different styles of leagues. But nothing where I wanted to overexpose what I need to do on a weekly basis or even daily. So it's nothing that the last thing you want to do is have a league that you just don't manage or anything like that, right? So it's something that I was conscious of as I drafted all these teams.
Yeah, totally valid. And it's coincidence that Rates and Barrels, which is, a pinnacle podcast in the industry, did this same topic. And Steve, I have not listened to that, but how did they frame up this topic in terms of most rostered players before we jump in and get to some of the names here?
Yeah, this was on our show notes a month ago. We have a nice little schedule breakdown. So
we got receipts,
that,
guys.
Yeah. We got the timestamp and everything for that. So it was just a coincidence that they did the same topic today. But hey, that means we're choosing good topics for this show, right? If those guys are doing it. So yeah, it was an interesting way of approaching it. It brought up a good point. My first thought is okay, these are the guys that you're betting on, you believe the most in. And while that's true, it's more, brought up the point that it's more the guys that you're taking flyers on, that you're because the guys early in the draft, their ADP is 10, but they may not be there for you to pick. Guys later on the draft are there for you to bump 1 or 2 rounds, and it's not that big a deal. I also think that there is another layer to that, though. I think that there's, the flyers that you believe in and the upside guys, the breakout pitchers that we all talked about last week, right? The breakout hitters that we talked about the week before that, that you'll be able to take shots on. And if you believe in them, you'll get a lot of shares of them. There's also guys that you really like the price of. They may not be first or second rounders, but like for me last year, that was Vlad, right? He was a 3rd round ADP. It's I'm all right, this was a down year. He's going to bounce back. I had a lot of Vlad. He would have been on this list for me last year. This year for me, we'll get into it, but there's definitely some players that are of that ilk too. So I think it's a mix of flyers and then guys that you really believe in, that you think could provide value even earlier on in drafts.
Yeah, I think it's a good point because early on when you're assembling your foundation, you might pass on a pick that was really exciting to you just for sake of roster construction. I know an example for me coming right off my home league draft is, man, did I want Spencer Schwellenbach, and it was pick 94. It felt appropriately priced. 9 times out of 10, I would say in a vacuum, I want Schwellenbach there. But instead, I was, looking to bolster my offense a little bit. So I went a different route. But that's an example of where this doesn't always equate to our favorite guys or our favorite picks. It's kind of just who we've wound up with the most from drafts. And I think you're right that the most consistent theme is once roster construction, and in a way that ADP value goes out the window is usually after pick 175 or somewhere in that range, where kind of ADP means nothing and you've addressed all of the key positions for the most part. And it kind of comes down to, like you said, or like Eno said, what flyers do you like? So Steve, you set yours up based on kind of shares from a volume standpoint. Since I only have 4 drafted teams so far, I did mine on percent exposure. So I will kick us off here. And I don't have across the 4 leagues, I don't have one player on every one of my 4
You don't? I
teams.
was hoping that was the case. Okay.
Yeah, it came close on a couple, but on the 3 out of 4, so the 75% exposure was a little surprised, but also not, because I've warmed up to this throughout the offseason that Jordan Westberg is kind of holding it down at the priciest ADP, because that's still in a range where you are addressing player position or you're looking at the best value on the table. And I found myself with Westberg on 3 of the 4 teams, and I'm excited, man. I think, and I know I've talked about him briefly on the show last episode or two, comparing it to kind of the Gunnar Henderson, which I know is a very lofty comparison. But the reason I make that is I feel like they both came up with a prospect pedigree that everyone was really excited about. Of course, Gunnar more so than Westberg. But if you remember that summer of 23, Westberg for like 8 or 9 weeks was the number one prospect to stash on Pitcher List or on Eric Cross's, out on Twitter. And for good reason. In the minors at that time, across 67 games, he had a 939 OPS. 67 games, he had 18 homers and 6 steals. And everybody was thinking, oh man, this guy is going to be the perfect like impact boost you need heading into August and September. And he came up and he just wasn't that. It was kind of this meh. He hit 260, but the power wasn't really there. Certainly not the way it had always been there in the minors. He stole 4 bases, which was great. But you kind of it got a little bit sleepy after that, where all last year, I think the hype had worn off. And then what do you know? Last year in 107 games, we see him hit 264, 18 homers, 6 steals, and all of that with a hand fracture that he dealt with in August. The underlying stuff is what was even more exciting, is it kind of showed us what we expected from how good he was throughout the minors. The barrel rate jumped from 6.5% in 23 up to close to 12%. The expected batting average was at a 281 over the 264. He had the hand injury. So with that, I think you're left to dream even more on what his power ceiling could be. Also with just his raw power and his age. And then you think about Baltimore moving the walls in. He's hitting 4th in that lineup, which is probably like certainly top 10 lineup, if not top 5 in that ballpark. And Westberg to me has been priced right between that 70 to 90 range, where I don't love all the hitters there. So yeah, I've wound up with Westberg. Plus he's got that second base, third base kind of flex eligibility, which is really intriguing too. So yeah, I found myself throughout the offseason getting more and more convinced that Westberg will be the player we always thought he was, and that 2 years ago was the blip on the radar, not last year. So very excited. The roster shares reflect it. And yeah, I got him in my home league over the weekend, and it got a lot of groans from the teammates or the league mates around me. So I'm excited about Westberg, man. Haven't heard your take on him too much. Are you with me on this one?
I do not have any shares of Westberg. I don't think that reflects how I feel about Westberg.
Okay.
I think it's also a very, very tough position. And Westberg is one of the last few, like, okay, I feel really good about this second baseman here. And where he's going, I think it's a decent discount to paying up for someone like Altuve, who's shown a little bit of signs here and there, right? Albies, who's had some injuries and, up and down years. I know a lot of that is due to when he's not necessarily available, but I think you could talk yourself into some more upside too, considering that Westberg is entering his age 26 season. This should be like some power peak and performance peak seasons for him. The walls are coming in Baltimore too, a little bit. It's not like what it's used to be for right-handed hitters there in left field, but it's also, there's no more Baltimore. So there's definitely, I know a lot of people talk about how that's going to help Ryan Mountcastle too. I haven't heard as much with Westberg, maybe because you don't think of him as that big bopper, but sometimes those are the guys that helps the most, right? Like if Westberg's going to hit just, some just enough, quote, just enough homers, right? That may be a really good thing for him. So despite the fact that I don't have any shares, I think it's really good. I've sort of been punting second base, and just like, okay, like I'm comfortable with a few late round targets, and I know it's going to be my weakest position. Make sure that my MIs in NFBC leagues where there's MIs and deeper roster slots, make sure they have second base eligibility to be able to cover that and focus on that. But that does not mean that I don't like Jordan Westberg. I had him last year early in the year and sort of just wrote it as a hot hand and dropped him, and should not have done that. So I felt the pain of that breakout last year, but that does not mean that I don't believe that he could do something similar, especially if he stays healthy. So I like Westberg a lot. There's really not much like that low K rate with the 12% power rate. Like those are my types of players. So I'm in on Westberg and think it's a good thing that you have that many shares.
Yeah, and Uncle Ted, shout out there on Luis Garcia Jr. He's actually on my 50% rostered rate. So when I haven't gotten Westberg, I've liked Garcia, and I feel like there's often a discount there. But I was going to ask you, Steve, because just scanning your list of high shares, I don't know if I see any like out and out second baseman just from browsing it. So when you have waited, I'm just curious. I got like the ADP stuff turned up. Like, have you grabbed a little bit of everything, like a Brandon Lau? I know we've talked about as a possible boost. Like, what's your parachute when you've waited for second base on all these drafts?
So it's a bit of everything, right? I have 2 shares of a bunch of different second basemen.
Gotcha.
I have 1 Ketel Marte share, so there you go. There's that. I also have a Marcus Semien too. I think he fell a bit in one league like that I did, like, back in December. But I have a bunch of 2 shares, 2 of Luis Garcia, 2 of Jonathan India, 2 of Christopher Morel, 2 of Ozzy Albies, 3 of Dylan Moore. Dylan Moore is more of like, okay, this is a speed play. He has a bunch of position eligibility. That's why I like him. He's in my 2 NFBC 50s, so the draft and hold of 50 rostered players, and then he's currently, I hate to admit this, but our starting shortstop in the Dynasty League. So
I'm bummed I have 0 India so far. So that I think that's a good one. And there's some chalkboard drum roll. I know we haven't released that yet, but yeah, there's an interesting.
If you know, you know. If you know, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, Steve, hit us up with wherever you want to take this, because I know you got more names listed off because you got more teams, more shares. But where do you want to go here first?
All right, yeah. So shout out Derek Van Riper, DVR of Rates and Barrels. They did this exact topic today and had this nice little visual that I pinged him on the Rates and Barrels Discord, and he said, yeah, this is a tool that is for, if you have a RotoWire subscription, you could link up all your teams, and it gives you this exercise that we did, right? Which is nice because I know NFBC does those player shares, and you can see that very quickly, but it's a little bit more manual if you have to do it with Yahoo, Fantrax. Those are the 2 other platforms that I play on. You can link up whatever you want, and RotoWire does this for you, which is really nice. So I guess I'll talk about, I know this is not necessarily the same format that you're doing, but the 4 pitchers that I have the most shares of.
Yeah.
That's Sean Burke, Landon Roop, Tobias Myers, and Jared Jones. 2 of them, very unfortunately, more so for Jared Jones. It looks like Jared Jones might be out for the year. He's going for a second opinion on his. When is a second opinion ever good? It's just to confirm the bad first opinion. I made a joke today, like, put going for a second opinion on my tombstone. Like that's like what. It's essentially, you're just waiting, you're just delaying the inevitable, which is a shame. I really, really thought Jared Jones was going to improve on that amazing first half he did last year. It looks like he kind of ran out of a little bit of gas. He came back in spring, was throwing a sinker, which, I think would have been perfect for some of his flaws last year, especially, a slight home run problem, considering he was really just a 2-pitch guy. Like, I think he could have taken like a Spencer Strider type of leap with how good his fastball and slider combination was. So it's such a shame. He was by far one of my most favorite players to watch last year. That's probably why I had so much of him. I think he was in a great range too. I was getting him as like my third or fourth starting pitcher in
Mhm.
most leagues, like right. So it wasn't like too expensive, which yes, this is a bummer that I have him on 4 teams, right?
Yeah, it's process
So
over result type of
yeah,
thing.
and it's also,
It is a
one
bummer.
one of them is, a shallower um redraft league. So it's like, okay, you just move in and cut on. Same with turf too. The best balls and 50s are a little bit tougher, but it is what it is, right?
On a
Um
brighter note, though, like Burke and Ralph's, like
yeah.
talk to me about these
Yeah,
guys.
I guess I won't sit here and complain about Myers. Who Myers seems like he'll be back sometime in April. But Sean Burke and Landon Raup, I think they're great end game fodder. Sean Burke got announced as the opening day starter for the White Sox. If anything, it's versus the Angels. Like that's a stream for the first week
Hmm.
in the lowest of low outcomes. Overall, though, we've talked about Sean Burke a bit this offseason. There's some interesting things to like. He came up, has a really good fastball, and looked the part in a September call up for the White Sox last year. So it looks like there could be something there with Landon Raup. So, with Sean Burke.
Yeah.
Um, for Raup, this was another thing that I rostered him a bunch in September, and he looked absolutely insane. Like he had some really good performances. Was like this sidearm guy that just guys this weird delivery that guys couldn't touch. He was like, partially a reliever, made a few starts down the stretch, and now it looks like he is vying for that fifth spot in the Giants rotation. And it's like another thing. Like if he doesn't make it, um, and he's not the starter, you just sort of move on. He's one of your first cuts there too. So um I really like both those guys as like high end upside flyers
Hmm.
in deeper leagues, and even in like 12 and 15 team leagues, like the last person um on your roster. I think Raup had like a 12 strikeout game on like a backfield in one of the starts. Like it seemed like he was going to get thrown down and sent down, and then like the last news item on him is is like actually no, he's still battling for that fifth spot. Like not yet. We're not done with him just yet. So
Hmm.
I'm excited about both those guys. I feel like they can be some boomer bust back end of the rotation, last pick in a shallower league type guys, and in deeper leagues, like who knows, like that could be they could be useful guys that you'd want to keep on your roster at least for the good matchups.
Yeah, and I think on like best balls, Raup is one that I know we always talk about the value of volume for those, but I do think that Raup is probably first man out if like Birdsong makes a rotation Hicks. But when you look at Verlander, Robbie Ray, and Jordan Hicks, there's a lot of injury history there. So like it might just take one thing, but I think Raup would be with the spring he's had would be ahead of Kyle Harrison. Is that or am I off base? Or did
I think
Harrison?
so. I think so.
Yeah, we got to see what Harrison's been doing this
Yeah.
spring.
Um, I think he's in the battle for him. I think there's also
Yeah,
Keaton
Ralph's
Wynn
been better.
who is interesting. I think Harrison's been a little rough this spring, but
Hmm.
um, Birdsong has also been good. Shout out Uncle Ted in the chat bringing that up. So it's definitely um, an interesting battle going on there with a lot of guys that seem pretty good, right? So
Yeah,
um,
Birdsong's just been so good that he probably
yeah,
has the edge. It's almost like between Hicks and Ralph would be my guess, and then Wynn and Harrison are kind of distant, but you just never know. Like opportunity finds its way, life finds a way, right? And
yeah.
if the skill is there, then I think Ralph should have a decent shot. So, no, I like that. Okay, so yeah, any let's see. So Burke, Raup, and then Myers and Jones. That's just
Yeah.
kind of unfortunate. Anything? Did you want to just stick with pitchers there for now, or do you want to hit on any other guys that are in
No,
that top?
we'll go back to you, and then we'll come back on
Okay,
some of the
right on.
sitters
Yeah.
that I got here.
Well, this next one won't be a surprise to many, and at this point, I think everyone is hearing all of the buzz and hype about Christopher Sanchez. I've got him on 3 out of my 4 teams. I have reached when I've needed to make sure that I have him. He is my, well, I think you could call it SP3 in my home league. So that's kind of where I'm valuing him. I do think it's at a point right now where he's so popular and surging so much that it's starting to make me nervous that, like, are we all just assuming that this big step is going to happen because the velo did uh the amount of increase decreased, right? Where it's like, it was 97 and 98, and now it's kind of come back down where I think it's like sitting at 96 for Sanchez. But overall, the strikeouts have been there. I think he proved last year that he can handle the volume. He got super unlucky last year with like the hit per 9. That's why PLV loves him. And if he can get that whip to a place where it's more indicative of his terrific command, then I think you're starting to look at, okay, this guy just moved from, a really good fastball to a great fastball with his extension. Amazing ground ball rate. The run prevention is there. It always has been. So I think that's where, like, to me, my rose tinted glasses say the upside for Sanchez that I think is extremely realistic is 170 innings, a strikeout per inning, a 3.40 ERA, and like a 110 whip on a team that will get wins as well. So that's I think on the upper end of his possible outcomes. But super excited about Sanchez, and yeah, I've been happy to kind of lean on that volume plus upside, high floor, high ceiling type of thing. And then I'll go quick on the next one because it was almost just a surprise to me that DJ Hers winded up on 3 out of the 4 drafts that I've done. This one is really just a pure upside pick. It doesn't look like he's going to break camp as part of that Nationals rotation. I think he would be another one that is like, odd man out with, Mike Soroka, who of course has had his own performance and injury stuff, but he's looked really good in the spring other than a recent like blow up start. But for the most part, I think they want to see what they got with Soroka. Mitchell Parker is there, Jake Irvin, but we saw Hers at the end of last year, and like that strikeout upside, the fastball, which has a super wonky, like low release point from the left side. It had I couldn't believe it, has the 3rd highest whiff rate amongst fastballs, only behind Garrett Crochet and Ryan Pepio. And I think that just comes back to what we've talked about, that if you've got that weapon as your primary, then the rest is just kind of like, can you figure out the peripherals? The command stuff is worrying with Hers at like last year. It was like just under 10%, but I feel like that's the mold of a lot of breakouts in years past, whether it's, a Hunter Green or, who else? Dylan Cease, like guys who have elite fastball stuff, but have a little bit of a command issue. I think, sometimes those guys aren't far away from taking a big step forward. So DJ Hers, I think, is the flyer type of pick, but if he doesn't have a spot, it's going to be hard to roster him. If it's a deeper league, then maybe you can afford to wait a little bit. But I do think just in general as a name, if and when he gets a rotation spot, I'm going to be watching very closely, like set the calendar update on your phone so you can add him in the 4th inning if he looks like he's locked in. So yeah, Christopher Sanchez, we've talked about. DJ Hers is another one that was a little bit of a wild card there, but those were my next 2.
Sanchez is like, it's like the least surprise. Like it's just accepted now that like the breakout's already like baked in, right? Like it's just like, okay, yeah, Sanchez is now this really good guy, which I think very well may be the case, but it's kind of funny how there's some guys that are just like, all right, yep, this is who he is now. Like before we even seen it, like it looks really good. So I think that's a really good really good pick. And I think you got shares like earlier on, right? Like you didn't have to pay this high too. I think that, with the helium, that rotation is super gettable. I think he'll be in it by, May the latest.
That's kind of what I was
There
thinking.
was some control problems, I believe, in the spring. I think he did walk some guys, but I wouldn't imagine that he'll be down for much longer there. So yeah, it was a rough spring for him, and 8% strikeout rate, 18% walk rate, and 9.2 spring innings. So maybe they just want to give him some time there, but I like Hers long term and think it's still a good play, and that'll pay off in draft and hold leagues for sure.
For sure. Okay, Steve, you're up. Who else we got here?
All right, let's go back to my little chart here, and I'm going to group these next two guys. We'll do 2 and 2. They're both teammates, but the first set of teammates is Matt Olson and Austin Riley, which I each have 4 shares of. And this is what I was kind of hinting at in earlier leagues, in my earlier point, that like these are the guys that I really like the price on. I think you're buying low because they both had down years. We've talked about all winter long how it was a calamity of errors for Atlanta last year. Like the fact that they made the postseason still is actually remarkable. And it was really due to the breakout of Spencer Schwellenbach, how good Reynaldo Lopez was, how amazing Sale was, and then by the way, to throw insult to injury, Sale was gone too for the last half of September and like didn't start in the playoffs. I think the Braves are due for a very, very big bounce back. They're going to get Acuna back at some point. In the first month and a half of the season, Strider does not seem far away. I think Olson and Riley are due for monster offensive seasons.
And Albies probably due for a bounce back type of thing.
Yep, for sure. Like Michael Harris was banged up and pretty brutal until a stretch in August, right? Like everything was wrong for them. Austin Riley started off slow, finally, in like June and July started to pick it up again and got on his, mid 30s, high 30s homer pace in June and July. And then he broke his hand and was out for the rest of the season. Matt Olson, if you look at his like process charts, in September, in August and September, like was back on to being Matt Olson and the guy that we can see hit 270 with maybe not the 54 homers he hit in 23, but I mean Matt Olson would be one of the few players that would bet on to hit 40. He's at 39, 36, 54, just the 29 last year, but I think that he could have years similar to his last year in Oakland and second year in Atlanta, where he had plus 900 OPS above that start with a 9,
totally,
and potentially lead the league in homers. So I really like the price on both those guys. Like I love grabbing both of them and in the 2-3 turn, like going outfield Olson Riley or Riley Olson, whichever one it is. Like I think that's a great way to start a build. So I just think they're mid second round talent going in, the end of the second to middle of third round right now. That's how I feel. What I feel Olson and Riley are.
Yeah, totally agree. I got Olson as my first baseman in TGFBI, and I think I believe we talked. Yeah, we grabbed him in the too early mock as well with Nick, so there's a bonus one there. But yeah, just talking about the fact that Olson's still just 30 years old. It feels like he's been around for so long, but it's not like he's on this big degrading skills, getting old type of thing. So I think you're right, Steve, that 40 is not out of the question. He only had 12 homers through June last year. So he went on that surge, and then yeah, the ICR just overall at Pitcher List. I know that's one of our favorite hitting metrics on their player pages. Matt Olson was 81st percentile. So love that. And yeah, we've talked about Riley and Devers next to each other throughout the offseason. And always we're kind of saying we like Riley on the edge there. That was even pre Devers banged up and DH and all that stuff. And just the shoulder scares in general for Devers from last year. So yeah, I think that's a great, like you said, a great way to start the build at the 2-3 turn. And yeah, hard to argue there with Olson Riley. Okay, we got more names here, but we're going to take our first ad break and we'll be right back after this. Okay, so Steve, I'm going to swing back over, and this is 50% exposure for me. So these are two out of my four. I think just the ones that I'll kind of group together would be the top 100 hitters, if you will. And the three I've found myself with shares on half my team so far: Freddie Freeman, Junior Caminero, and Riley Green. I'm curious your take on Junior, because I feel like he was one at the start of spring that everyone had kind of anointed as this breakout. And then he slowly kind of, struggled in spring with a 152 average. That said, I think everybody believes in like the raw skills. The pop certainly just like in terms of a breakout pick, he's one of the more exciting names in like the top 150. So I think part of that is because I've missed on third base early. And from there, I've actually found decent value with Caminero. Like I thought he was a name, especially early on in spring, that would start to sneak into like the 60s. And I've been able to get him later than that, like late 70s, 80s. In my home league is where I got him at, like, I think it was pick 93. He was the one right next to Schwellenbach when I was like, you know what, I better go bat here. So Caminero is one. Freddie Freeman, man, I'll just never quit. I think I know that his walk rate doesn't really translate to the 5x5 stats as much. I probably am still dreaming on what he did in the World Series overall, but I just think he is regularly one of the best hitters in baseball. And I don't see that slowing down this year. So he's been one that I've looked at kind of like at the late first round, early second round, where I feel really good about Freddie. The other thing is I am not as excited about the first base backup option. So I really do like that, Freddie, Bryce, Olson, Vlad, one of those like top 4 or 5 studs. That's been our philosophy for years. And then Riley Green, you kind of got me sold on, Steve. I think I had gone into the offseason pegging Green as like 265 with like a 25 homer type of cap. But I really do think that the hit tools are there for him to flirt with 30 and maybe like a 280 batting average, which starts to get, in a good lineup, when you add the runs and RBIs, that starts to look like, a top 50 player in next year's drafts. There's room for Green to take a step forward just with his age and prospect pedigree. Any of the steals would just be gravy, in my opinion, if he can chip in between 5 or 10. But yeah, I like that. I like that as an OF1 or an OF2, and I've landed there with Green on a couple of drafts and felt really good about it. So Freeman, Caminero, Riley Green, open to your comments here before we swing it back to you.
Caminero's ADP in main events, there's been 13 of them, 67. I thought it would have been higher than that too, right? Like, with the helium of all the
Overall.
Winter League home runs and how third base kind of is a tough position, right? He's still the 6th third baseman off the board. And there is a bit of a cliff after him to Vientos and then Westberg, who you're probably playing Westberg at second, though. But same with Jazz when he eventually gets second base, right? So I love Caminero. I had him in a keeper league. So I don't hate it at all. He's just, but yeah, in like Yahoo home leagues, like he does fall a little bit more. So I think there's some opportunity there. Like you can get him probably around. Where'd you get him in your home league, right? Like
not 93rd.
Yeah. We're at NFBC. It's 40 picks. That's good. That's good value, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm
And then, yeah,
glad.
you mentioned
I'm
Riley.
glad with Riley that with Riley Green I've convinced you there. That's a win for me at least. But I just think we've talked about him so much. He's probably our most talked about player this winter. Um, I just think there's so much room for growth. I think he's one of the most complete hitters that is sort of like a Freddie Freeman light in the outfield that maybe has potential for a few 30 home run seasons coming up here, despite his ballpark. But
Yeah,
um,
we lean pitchers along with the rest of the industry,
mhm.
but in terms of hitters, he has definitely been on the Mount Rushmore of the offseason. All right, Steve, over to you. We're kind of past that top tier of guys, so this is the next wave, right?
Yeah. Actually, it's the two
Couple
last guys I
more.
want to talk
Oh
about.
yeah,
Were
yeah.
both my Astros here. Hunter Brown and Jordan Alvarez. Hunter Brown's been like my SP1/2 sort of target. In NFBC leagues, I'm comfortable with him as an SP2. I do have him in TGFBI, Earth, and a best ball. So the weekly leagues, he's in there. So those leagues are important. We care about them. He's been my SB2. Um, you know, and I just think that what we saw last year with his adjustments on the rubber, his introduction of a sinker, um, really, really showed that he broke through and was an SP1. And I think if he didn't have that April and you didn't look at the overall line, he might be going as like, someone that is around pick 60, like with Yamamoto and stuff. Like,
Hmm.
I think because he did have that slow start, his draft price is a little bit suppressed. Whereas you kind of can look at it as two different pitchers there, from mid-April on, when he put up arguably the best the best numbers of really any pitchers that were out there. So I'm really excited for what Hunter Brown could do, and like his okay, we thought you could break out after a pretty good 2023. People may have dropped him in the first month, and then uh, proved everyone wrong. So I'm excited for Hunter Brown and think that sort of the overall line of like a 3.5 with like a 1.25 whip is like the floor. But I think there's room for more. There's upside for more just because of how much better he was, um, than those first 5 or 6 starts of the year.
Hmm. Yeah, spring training. I mean, he's been solid. It's been like almost what you'd expect, like 26% K rate, 8 and change% walk rate. But to your point, Steve, yeah, last year, the April a 9.78 ERA, and from then on in, I mean, his second half a 2.26 ERA, with over a strikeout per inning. Like if that can continue, Andy can take a step forward because everyone was really excited about him too. And we've talked when we were talking about Spencer Arrighetti about how you have to give any Astros pitcher an extra boost just for their way of getting the most out of these guys. So yeah, age going into the age 26, 27 season. I think Brown is an exciting one in that range that we're excited about, but I haven't wound up with any shares. And I think
Wow, that's surprising. That's
it
surprising. I felt
is.
like you were a big Hunter Brown guy.
I gotta look at where I've gone in that range. But yeah, you can talk about Jordan while I look up who I've leaned toward instead.
Yeah, Jordan, I think I got in my first draft this year, and then I got him in two most recent. So like I've bookend my Jordan shares. I got him in a best ball, and then I got him in just a straight redraft 12-team league that I did last night, and then in the keeper draft that I'm literally drafting as we speak right now. Where I had like a bunch, like I had like 3 first-round picks, and he was one of my first-round picks there.
Mhm.
Bubba and the Bloom, Ryan Bloomfield, and Casey Bubba have been talking about how important it is to pair power with average. And on a per plate appearance basis, like it's Jordan and Judge. Like those are the guys that you can count on for a 300 average and 35 plus homers. Like I think that's the list. I know there's other first rounders that chip in lots of steals and are more 5 category guys. And I know that both Judge and Jordan have some injury concerns, more so with Jordan. Like Judge, I think is past that label. Like I don't really count the freak incident in LA where he ran into the wall and his toe is something that like it made him quote unquote injury prone. Jordan, yes, there's some lingering issues. Even today he was scratched, or yesterday he was scratched with the sore thumb, right, the knees. But with Altuve moving to the outfield, Cam Smith looking like he may break camp, the prospect traded for Kyle Tucker that looks really good. Jordan's going to see most, if not all, of his time at DH. So I think that that'll help him a lot. And like I said, like there's speed now throughout the draft, especially in FBC formats where like you have so many positions to fill, MI, CI, util, 5 outfield slots that you could piece together some categorical needs. I think it makes it even more important to have someone that is going to be a plus for average and a plus for steals with those counting stats, or not steals, for homers, that Jordan and really Judge just are. And you can sort of make up steals along the way. So I really like Jordan. I always have. This is like the first year that I have this much exposure to him, so I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, I got him in my Rad Slam on I was on the wheel at the back of the draft and did Tatis Alvarez to start my build.
That's such a great combo, man. That is such a great combo.
Leaning on outfield early there, and Riley Green as an OF3 just to boot there. So that's a fun team. That whole team is this show. Jordan Westberg, Junior Caminero. Well, Steve, I can jump back over because to answer the question of where I've kind of gone when Hunter Brown's been right at the top of the queue, another one of my 50% shares is Logan Webb, who I've talked about plenty. And I think this probably just comes down to more of looking for the high floor and the volume. I do think, for what it's worth, Logan Webb's had a really good spring, and he's done so kind of experimenting with the arsenal and expanding different pitches. And I think last year we just saw a higher whip than we've ever seen for Logan Webb. You still know that it's kind of the same thing as George Kirby, that like when you have a 4%, 5% walk rate, you shouldn't have a whip that's like in the 120s if you're a good pitcher, and Webb is a good pitcher. So there hasn't been a ton beyond the fact that, I like Webb's extension, his ground ball rate, everything we always talk about, but I think it's encouraging that he's kind of throwing more than just, his typical like sinker changeup combo this spring. But honestly, I think some natural regression would have done it anyway, to where, to me, Webb is just, he sets up more room for all of the picks that follow for me when it starts getting into, your Eric Eddy, your Gavin Williams, your Ryan Weathers, like all those really like salivating popular breakout picks. I feel safer about when I have a Webb as just like a glue guy as my SP2 or SP3. So I've gone with Webb quite a bit. And then just like browsing some of my other like single shares, but like TGFBI and Raz Slam, I've gone Bryce Miller on one of those. I think that could be a spot where I think I could be convinced on Hunter Brown. But yeah, Webb is definitely one that's he's on half of my teams. I think it's Raz Slam and TGFBI, so big ones. But yeah, that's the one in that range of pitchers where we say like, oh, between rounds 6 and 11, you need to go out and grab 3 or 4 starters. I've kind of had like the garden variety, with the exception of targeting Logan Webb. It hasn't even been like, oh, he fell onto my roster. Like he's been one that I've been waiting on and grabbing. So yeah, not sure if you got anything to add there on Webb, but I feel like if you're Brown, then you're probably deciding against Webb and just saying, I'm going for that guy that could be, a SP1 by the end of the year, which I don't really expect Webb to be. I'm just kind of looking at him for that cushion and high floor.
I think Webb allows you to take like DeGrom, Glass now, other guys that may not be like, I think he's a great pair with like Brian Wu, things like that, that
Mm-hmm.
he allows you to do so much down the, with your rotation, just because he's such a bank with so much bankable innings there. And I mean, he also pitches half his games in, the most pitcher friendly park, really in baseball, honestly. And I agree with you. Like, the K's may not be there on a percentage basis, but they will be on a volume. And I also just don't think that he'll run, a BABIP that high and, could potentially push the ground ball rate again. It wouldn't take much for him to get back to 2023, where he was like one of the best pitchers in baseball. Right. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm with you on that. I could see that being a really good call. I do believe I have at least one share or two of Webb. I think he's
Nice.
just I got him in my Gladiator. So
Oh, that's
even though
perfect.
I've lost Cole, already in that for the year. At least I still have Webb. So
Yeah.
for now.
All right. Well, Steve, I think you're up next, but we are going to take our second ad break and we'll be right back after this. Okay. So, Steve, take us where you will here on you going pitchers or hitters here?
Yeah, this is not on my graphic, but I'll go with another. We don't need to talk about Kerry Carpenter. I have 3 shares of that. We don't need to talk about Riley Green. I have 3 shares of that of him. Someone that I'm surprised that I have this many shares of, but I think is just I found him, um, being available and when I don't have this position taken, and that's Ezekiel Tovar.
Yeah.
Especially in 5x5 average leagues. Like, I know that, the walk rate is atrocious. I know the plate skills aren't great. It's a high K percentage. He swings at absolutely everything. But for the stats that we care about, this is a good power hitting shortstop that plays elite defense, that plays every day and plays half his games in Coors Field and just hit 26 homers as a 22-year-old. With a 9% power rate. I think that there is, a potential for, a 30 homer season with good counting stats and runs and RBIs and an average that will be at least slightly helpful to very helpful. Sure, when you do strike out that much, you may not, be able to run a 269 average like he did last year. But even if he hits 253 like the year before, with the volume that he gets, the power that he's able to now, reach in game, I'm pretty excited about Ezekiel Tovar. I think his year kind of went under the radar, and
Mm-hmm.
I kind of gotten away from the fact that I love drafting Rockies hitters just because there's been so few of them outside of like a half season from Nolan Jones and then, a breakout from Brenton Doyle. Like, it's awesome having a player that plays, a 15 game stretch where they have 12 games in, 90-degree weather in Colorado. And the team just, loses 12-10 every day, but, he could have 2 homers and 6 RBIs. I love those games. That's a fantasy heaven for me. Midsummer games at Coors Field. So having a shortstop that plays every day that has this power, I'm excited about Ezekiel Tovar. Not that I knew what I was getting into. He wasn't like a target of mine. He just ended up on a lot of my teams, and I understand why.
Yeah, I agree. I think that we've talked about how we're not in on Adames is on that island, right? It's like after the big shortstops, then you got like an Abrams, and then it seems like Adames is the only shortstop for like 30 picks. But after that, where Tovar is in like the 120s or something, I do think that that's kind of appropriately priced and comes with just, first of all, the raw upside of Coors, but even just looking at like his home away splits, he had as many homers away from Coors as he did at Coors last year. And he wasn't bad on the road, like a 261 average on the road. Like I know everybody talks about the Coors hangover and everything, but I think you bring up a lot of good points that like, yeah, this guy for being 23 years old, he's somebody everyone was excited about when he came up, and he kind of did it last year. It's just nobody wants to talk about the Rockies because everyone is just, you know, they've just been such a dumpster fire of a franchise, and it feels like we're like almost burnt out, whether it was, you know, CJ Crone or Nolan Jones or like whatever those, it seems like it's been a while, and Doyle just kind of came out of nowhere. Even oh gosh, why am I blanking on Brendan, the second baseman?
Brendan Rodgers.
Brendan Rodgers was another one that everybody was so excited about. I think we got so excited for a while that now we're just all just not giving it the appropriate hype when a really good hitter is at Coors. And yeah, he might be a better fantasy player than real life player with the plate skills like you talk about, but who cares? And yeah, I think even the speed is a question. Like I want to pull up, because how much did he run in the minors too? Yeah, I mean, like he ran a lot in the minors, so I wonder if that's another space. Where's his sprint speed?
Yeah,
at?
I was just pulling that up.
Is he just the 7-8 guy, or could he go for
No,
like?
I mean he's
15?
71st percentile in sprint speed. So there's guys that with worse sprint speeds that steal a lot of bags. So
he's a great bold predictions guy. You know what I mean?
So too.
Like,
Yeah,
I think you could write a bold predictions piece on him being a 30-15.
Yeah.
You know,
who knows? Maybe there's some more upside for speed, like once he like actually hones his base running skills, right? Like he was such a raw prospect, and like, you know, not to pass judgment on his plate discipline, right, throughout into other areas of his games, but he's definitely, you know, someone that, you know, has the bunch of talent, but can put it all together and maybe take some further steps here. But yeah, I love having Rocky players, so I'm all about Tovar this year.
Oh, I like it. Any other ones in this range, Steve, for your hitters on 3-share hitters, or did you want
to? The rest of I want to hit. Yeah, actually, there's another guy, Colton Cowser. I actually have 3 shares of too. That was kind of surprising. I think he's kind of been like my OF3 that's fallen to me a bit, and I think kind of went under the radar. I know it was a bit streaky of a season last year, but on the whole for the year, he was 20% better than average. You know, sure, the strikeout rate is high, but it was lower at certain stops in the minors. The 14% barrel rate is exciting. You know, a lefty in that lineup, in that ballpark, even if it is a strong side of the platoon, like he's still going to provide, you know, I think, you know, 20 plus homers, an okay average, and some good counting stats with that lineup there. So I think he's been a great, like, okay, yeah, I need an outfielder here. Like, let's get someone that can provide some power, and you know, he got 9 steals too, so it's not a non-zero there. He even played center for them a bit, so you know, I think there's more of an athlete there than people realize with Colton Cowser. So I think he's good. Yeah, that's an Uncle Ted special. He's been preaching his name all off season long in our chat. So you know, maybe it's just I don't know, some you know, strides of some you know, some just osmosis
on the chat.
and yeah, just that it's infected my brain that I need to take Colton Cowser.
Nice, I love it. Yeah, my next one I was going to hit on is Tommy Edman, who of course
I love this one, man. I don't have any shares, but I love this one.
Yeah, I got him in 50% so far, and yeah, I feel like it's kind of some sneaky pop upside, because we saw him hit. He was on the best home run pace of his career in St. Louis in 2023, and not a ton, but I mean, when you're talking about a Tommy Edman, you're trying to graduate from being like a rabbit, right? With 10 homers, 30 steals. He was on pace for like, you know, plus 15 homers in 2023. And then last year, and just with the Dodgers, the 37 games he had 6 homers. He was great in the playoffs. And then in spring this year, he had 3 homers in 12 games. And, obviously he's already had a home run in 2 games. So I think when you think about Edman, you think about, average, if not plus, on the batting average side of things. The speed is a definite plus. And then if he can be like a 15 home run guy, when you add in just the lineup context with the Dodgers, to me, he feels like kind of a Pete Crow Armstrong with a discount in draft rooms. And yeah, I think it seems like kind of like what Ryan Bloomfield was talking about with Teoscar. I mean, the Cardinals were not in a good place as an organization for those last couple of years, and it seems like he has a new lease on life in LA. Like, great vibes with the team. The team loves him. You saw with Mookie out, they moved him up to hit second in that order. Just would not shock me if we saw for Edman something that looked like kind of a rebound year for his career, as he's still going into like his age 30 season, but looks every bit like he's up for it. And yeah, when you look at the possibility that he plays all over the field, I think the volume can be there as long as health is pending. So yeah, I like Edman all around. I'm excited. I got a couple shares out of my 4 drafts so far.
I think that's a great call. Did he have second base eligibility?
He played twice so far. I mean, but Mookie.
Yeah. So if he doesn't, he'll get it. Yeah, I am upset that I don't have more shares of Tommy Edman. I think this is going to be something that we look back. It's like, how didn't we see Tommy Edman coming? Just because it's like the Dodgers, and of course they're going to get the most out of Tommy Edman, right?
Right.
I think that he'll find his way into that lineup most days. Like, think about all the playing time that Chris Taylor always got, right? Like,
yeah, exactly.
I could see this being like, peak Chris Taylor when he was like their special utility guy that moved all around, like their Zobrist type. He's a switch hitter. I know he hits lefties a lot better, but I still think that they'll, with his versatility and defensive value, find his way into the lineup, and that's a great lineup to be a part of. Edman's still he's not 30 yet, so it's not super young, but he's been around for a while. But he's also not like where Chris Taylor was on like the complete decline in his mid to late 30s, right? I think Edman may still have a few years in him, and we all know what happens when Cardinals outfielders and utility guys leave the Cardinals, right? They become studs. So
yeah,
I had to get that in there for you. So.
And Ohtani hitting behind him is a huge thing for runs. And like, just looking at his projections, like the top projection for his average is 254. Like, I think he's
a 263 career hitter.
That's what I'm saying. I don't think he's just like a aging again, like skills degrading. I think that's just I think honestly that's low. But like, you look at Zips has him for 14 homers, 26 steals, 83 runs, 69 RBIs, and 254. Like, I think you'd take that, but I think you could make the argument that average could be much higher than 254 if he has, a year with a high BABIP or something. But yeah, he just seems like a 260 to 270 range type of hitter. So yeah, I think there's a lot of upside. And you've heard me, Steve, commiserating about how I don't love outfield this year, and he feels like one that you can just get in. I mean, now that he had the hot start, maybe not as much, but I'm just curious where his ultimate ADP ended at 181. So I'm sure that's been on the rise, but that just shows that, the price is right, in my opinion.
So he played 24 games in center last year, 18 at short, 1 at second. So in NFBC, where it's 20 games, he only has outfield eligibility. Mm-hmm. But this year, I could see him having outfield. I could see him getting short. I could see him getting second. He even played third back in the day. Not that many starts, but he had 8 starts there in 2022, 55 starts there in 2019, 31 in 2020. So he can do it. And the Dodgers are the type that will move him all around.
Yeah.
So I think he'll have a lot of position eligibility. And it seems like second's his home. And when I've talked about punting second base, like I think that, if you could wait the few games, I think Edman is an absolute steal of a target there. I wish I had more of them. Great call there with Tommy Edman. Might be one of my favorite picks for you there.
Love it. All right. Well, Steve, let's go back to you for maybe a pitcher. And I know we're getting close on time, but yeah, maybe we'll do one more each.
Yeah, one more each. All right. I don't know. Have we talked about this guy too much? Gavin Williams is a guy that I have 3 shares of. I think that he'll be next to sort of breakout. It looks like everything's there. He's lowered his arm slot, increased his. He was on our breakout pitchers list, right? So I don't need to get too much into it. I would have more shares of him if I wasn't sniped on the 2 most recent drafts with a bunch of buddies that listen to the show. So maybe we should have held off talking about him. But I have a ton of Gavin Williams this year, and I think he is due for a breakout. If you didn't listen to last week's episode, he is one of the fastest fastballs to the plate, behind Jared Jones and RIP, preeminently. Hopefully he's okay.
Second
And Garrett Crochet. So he has the tools. He has some great breaking balls, a slider, and working on some new shapes too. So I'm all about Gavin Williams this year, and hope I could add one more share to him in my last draft coming up here on Sunday.
Yeah, it looked like he. I was just gonna peek because I hadn't heard about Williams in a few days, and had 5 more strikeouts today and
Yep.
4 innings. I was trying to see, because I know Nick Pollock has talked about, like, I want to see more than the fastball. I was trying to quickly scan and see if he threw more of the secondary stuff. Okay,
Was it a Savant game today for them?
I did not see that, but this is a tweet from Ron Dyer at Ron's Man Cave. Shout out. First 3 innings of almost exclusively fastball, then comes in with the hammer curve in the 4th and 5th.
He threw 40. He threw 80 pitches, 47 fastballs, 21 curves, 11 sliders. So the sliders exclusively the righties. He threw the curveball to both lefties and righties. So let's see the whiffs. Yeah, he got 6 whiffs on the curveball. So that may be what our fearless leader Nick Pollock will be wanting to see. We'll see.
Yeah, I like it that it wasn't just all heaters. So no, that's a great one. And then let's see where I want to go with my last one here. Well, I mean, it's just worth noting because it was a flag plant that Tyler Fitzgerald is on 2 out of the 4.
Backing it up. You're walking the walk.
Walking the walk there, but also and that's been hard too. Drafting Fitzgerald there is hard because he's right in the eye of the storm of those pitchers we get so excited about. So you almost have to like force yourself to not pick, another one of like Boz, Arrighetti, Gavin Williams, Clay Holmes. Like, it's like, all right after them, I'll grab a Tyler Fitzgerald. So he's there. I think, Dustin May, I've talked about. This will just be my sampler platter because Jeffrey Springs was one I talked about earlier in the year. I do think he's a different shape for a little bit more of like stability. I think he pairs nicely when you grab like 2 or 3 of those other wild cards in that range. And then, I mean, Steve, we talked about Justin Martinez, but I do have him. We don't talk about relievers very often on the show, but Martinez, as other than like 1 outing, has had a really good spring.
He is on my list as well.
He's
3
like
shares. And early in draft season, I was able to grab.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but yeah, that like
no. Good.
I
think we were both. Yeah. I know there was some news today. Terry Lavolo came out and said that they're going to play the matchups, not naming a closer, but Martinez is the righty in that matchup, so I think that plays favor to the righty versus AJ Puck. In earlier drafts, I was able to grab both Williams and Puck before the helium started on some Puck and Martinez. Where now they're kind of going in like the same round, so you can't really do that. So it's nice to pair both of them. But I know as good as I could just see Puck, one, because like he was trying to be a starter, that maybe he's a fireman that can go a little bit more than, just the ninth inning, and then they hand the ninth just to Justin Martinez. Um, and to the fact that he's the righty. Like I think that they're both extremely nasty. Like, the old adage is like bet on the best stuff in the bullpen. Well, Puck and Williams are both the best stuff. Like they're both amazing. It's a strange scenario, but I think I would lean with the righty, and maybe the fact that Puck could be, that the fact that he does have at least, came up as a starter, tried to be a starter last year. We all know how that went, but maybe he can get some more length.
That's a good point.
And Martinez could just be sort of the ninth guy, whereas Puck could be the fireman. But I mean, it's a great arm to bet on. So I'm with you. I have 3 shares of Martinez as well.
Yeah,
I think it might be actually 4 now. As I did my draft there.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, it's been a good looking spring. Like you said, the stuff is nasty, and it's just mainly been, like you said at the top of the show, that it's all around where you're getting these guys and where you see the value. And yeah, for Justin Martinez to get a guy that could presumably get like 20 saves with really good strikeout numbers, and hopefully, I know there's a little bit of volatility, but hopefully the good ratios as well. Getting him at like pick 230 is a really good range. So yeah, Martinez was one that was on there as well. So yeah, I think talked about a ton of names there. I don't know, Steve, as you scan, if there's anybody else you left off, but I talked about Dustin May recently. He's on my list as well. I thought it was funny that as much as I've moved on from Zach Eflin, I found myself like he was one that would just drop 2 or 3 rounds past his ADP, and I'd be like, all right, if you're forcing me to get him as like a SP5 again, it'll free me up to pair it with like a Gavin Williams or somebody that could be feast or famine. But yeah, those are some of my names. I don't know if there's any quick hit ones that you wanted to cover before we wrap here.
No, I think we've gone long enough, and it's exciting, and glad we've waited all this time for shares of guys, and now we have them. One more draft left for me, so
you can imagine, Steve,
that, yeah.
shifting on a conclusion here, but you can imagine how excited I was to see Spencer Strider out there and dealing after I grabbed him at like pick 100 in my home league and paired him with DeGrom, dude. My draft room was like, what are you doing? And I'm like, listen, I've made the playoffs 6 years in a row, and I haven't won since 7 years ago. So it's time for me to go big or go home and just bet on top talent, which and part of it is, I think, too, in home league, you trust yourself to be faster to the waiver wire, and like, you know what I mean? You can take some risks that you can't get away with on like a TGFBI. So yeah, I had a higher appetite for risk, but went DeGrom, Strider, and then Jack Flaherty was a keeper for me late, like in the like 160s. And then also got Christopher Sanchez in there as well. So that's kind of my core. And then I loaded up after that with like Gavin Williams, Arrighetti, Ryan Weathers, like a handful of those late darts that we love. So yeah, I'm excited for sure, but we have yet to even talk about my home league. So I had to throw that out there, that against all odds, I went with DeGrom after I was telling you were insane back in November when I was like, I'm not touching it with a 10-foot pole. And here I am with him as my SP1.
There you go. I mean, the same sort of sentiment like last year. Like I had no intention of taking Ellie, and then I just saw him like slowly falling to me in my second round pick, and I was just like, you know what, like I do best when it was the same situation. Been in the playoffs a bunch, hadn't made it past first round, all that. And I was like, all right, you know what? Like I do best when it's sort of like a bit more YOLO in my home league. So I feel you on that, and I ended up winning last year in large part due to Ellie. So, I think it's hard to balance. All off season we draft in these industry, best ball. Okay, you need X amount of hitters, X amount of pitchers, X position eligibilities, Y, category
5
needs.
pitchers by the 120 or whatever it is. Yeah.
Whereas in your home league, like no one knows your home, and that's, and I know it's taboo to talk about, but that's what most of our listeners care about the most. And
For
that's
sure.
why, that's what we love about this, like, and why I think it's more important just to focus on like the actual players rather than like, what specific form. Like, I think that's why our show is focused on more specific player driven and data driven analysis and stuff like that. So um, to have these sort of deep dives of why we're doing it, and why we like certain players, and why, who we think are values. I think that's where we can provide the most value as a show, but also, like, you need to do with that information what you know best in
For
your
your
league
league.
set for
Yeah.
your league, because you've been playing with the same guys for 20 years. I've been playing for the same guys for 15 years. Like, I know the certain settings to the few different leagues that I do that are outside NFBC, things like that. So um, make the decisions with your settings and risk tolerance, and knowing what works in your specific leagues in mind, is sort of my long-winded closing
Mhm.
point there.
Yeah. So we'll see. I'm on the roller coaster, and yours is this weekend. So I
Yeah,
definitely want to hear
exciting stuff. Yeah.
get some text updates, and then next week we will be releasing the podcast on opening day. So that'll be a big show. That has to be a chalkboard, right, Steve?
Yeah, that's Chalkboard, our
Gotta
favorite
be.
show. It's it's the best.
Last note for Jimmy in the chat asked if Royce Lewis picked 156 is decent value or not. I mean, encouraging, just the quick search, hearing him say that it's nowhere near as serious as his quad injury last year. I mean, it just depends. I think as long as you're looking at Royce with kind of the same DeGrom mentality of like, okay, you're going to get hopefully 115, 120 games of Royce, and then it's whoever you pair with him on the wire, then I think there's nothing wrong with it, because he's just got such a sweet swing, and we know that like when he is on the field, he's really good. For specifically like that value at 153, let me jump over to third baseman, just see like, so
In the
that's
last 3 days, so
Mhm.
when did he get hurt? I think either slightly before that. There's been 29 NFBC drafts. He's gone 210, but to our point, there is no IL slots in NFBC.
Good point. Yeah.
So this the 50 picks that's later, you're burning one of your 7 bench spots on Royce Lewis there. If you have an IL slot, I think pick 156 is a great value, especially considering that it isn't as serious as what happened
Mhm.
last year. He went in the 12th round of a 14-team league that I was just drafting in,
Mhm.
or sorry, the 11th round, the 12th pick of the 11th round. So around that spot,
With
um,
no IL,
with an IL, as a Yahoo league.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
but with no IL, I would prefer Eugenio Suarez, Alec Bohm, and Isaac Paredes over him. I think even with no IL, it would be hard for me to take like a Michael Garcia or Josh Young over. Like I think I would have him at like third base 17
yeah.
personally.
I would. I think.
Um,
I agree with you there. Like, after Paredes, I would be pretty much okay with Lewis, even no IL.
yeah.
So yeah, we're probably. I mean, that's a matter of 10 picks or so, based on the last few days in FBC. But you know, we saw the upside of Lewis and the excitement of Lewis at points last year. I know when he did stay healthy, the production dropped, but he talked about, changing his workout routine and staying in shape. I know that didn't come to fruition, so it sounds crazy talking about that right now, considering he got hurt before even the real game started. But I still think it's easy to forget how amazing Ruiz was for that stretch that he was healthy at the start last year when he first came back.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if he was 100 35, 140 games, like, yeah, sky's the limit. He almost has that hit tool thing of some of the names that go in like the first 2 or 3 rounds, like when it all clicks. So awesome. Well, thank you guys for hanging with us. No, it was a long show, but fun topic, going over our most rostered players. Again, you guys can find us on the live stream every Wednesday night throughout the season, or the podcast on Thursdays. If you're still with us here, super appreciate it. If you guys go out, give us a rating and review, always goes a long way for us. Otherwise, you guys can follow us throughout the season on X at Wins Above Pod, on Blue Sky at Wins Above Fantasy, and Steve is Stav8818. I am Van_verified on X and Van-verified on Blue Sky. But yeah, if you guys have any topics you ever want to hit us up with, we're happy to include them on the show. Otherwise, we'll be here every week. And thank you guys for joining baseball. And thank you guys for talking baseball with us, and enjoy draft season.
Thanks, guys. Good luck in your last week of drafts. Cannot wait for the season. Later.